Cool.
That's kind of why I wanted to come here today.
But
Okay.
Light fire under my ass.
Marty was talking.
Welcome to Microformats Baltimore Saturday. We're going to point you at the screen, and hopefully you can read it. Maybe we'll turn off the lights.
Do you want me to dim the lights for this side?
yeah,
If the live stream is going to see anything.
I think the whole place should get dimmer and dimmer and gently coax it.
Anybody want to fight me for the last
This is
one?
a big possibility.
Now go for it.
We're going to look at ways to mark up appropriate microformats. You're not going to see any of us, but hopefully you'll hear us. Actually, I don't know if you even hear me because I'm talking into the wrong microphone.
I don't need my charger.
Microphone's on the table. Good times.
Hopefully they read.
Did you get a level for that microphone? Is the placement where it should be?
It's great. It's in the middle of the table.
Chris Aldrich was now.
Okay.
If he's joining us.
Shall we start?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay, so I have a website and I want other websites and tools to be able to parse it, right? To be able to like get meaningful data out of it. And so there are multiple ways of doing that. There's RSS, but mostly it's working for like recent posts and it's for like subscribing and getting notifications. Then there's Open Graph, which is supposed to be open, but actually mostly used by Facebook. And then there's Schema and their microformats. And now I'm confused. And who's gonna help me understand how all this works? So why not just use HTML? HTML is a markup language. We have tags, wonderful like article and title, like H1.
And blink.
Blink. It's a lot of semantic is in the blink tag. How do we So if I understand correctly, the reason for microformats and Open Graph and others is because like we don't have enough tags in HTML to properly translate what we're trying to. So who is the author of this post? I don't know if maybe there is an author tag in HTML. Maybe bad example. I don't know. What is the permalink to this post? What is the cover image of this post? Not enough tags, right? Is that the reason mainly? For
I think the main reason for using microformats is because it's machine readable data that is independent of your layout. So you don't have to. You can have a blog post title in a regular paragraph tag. It doesn't have to be in an H1. And this gives you the flexibility. You can put the class P name on whatever element you are wrapping your title in. Your title could just be wrapped in a div, an H1, any of the H's. So it's just machine readable data in the class. So that way you have the most flexibility with your presentation and your layout.
Okay. Yeah. So that makes sense. You could also use attributes. Why did they go with class names?
There is an FAQ about this on the Microformats.org wiki. I'll find that. Another common question is like, isn't it, excuse me, aren't classes only for styling content for CSS? And that's actually not entirely true, apparently. You can put other data in there.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Oh, also data attributes, I think, are only supposed to be visible by
code running on the page.
I mean, they're in there, but they're intended for the client reading it. The browser? Yeah, I don't remember. That's another FAQ. Like, why not use like data attributes?
Okay. Okay, and to cover this all, why not like use Open Graph? I could answer that. Why would we need to duplicate all the content and like when we already have it in the markup? And if we properly have proper attributes to it, we can just. So I have this this post here, and I just want to make sure that the parser will know where things are. What other parsers actually? Who, like, if I add what are the benefits? I will add microformats to my blog. What am I getting out of it?
Good question. I mean, one of the things that you're getting is that if you are sending responses, so if you're sending likes, doing reposts, sending replies from your site to another site in the IndieWeb style, like if it can understand web mentions, it's probably also going to try to parse your page with a microformats parser to understand what this page is. And so that's going to be micro formats. Other examples, I mean, what consumes micro formats?
So
a lot of stuff is
probably
stuff.
one of the quickest examples, and this could affect the people. You mentioned earlier, or last night, I guess you were talking about people subscribing to your RSS feed. There's a service called Greenery, which takes a variety of different inputs and takes them into different outputs. So it'll actually take micro formats and output an RSS feed or an Atom feed. So you can mark up your HTML with HFeed, which is really pretty simple. And then
not only pretty simple, but like pretty rich. Like RSS is as a format is super abused, and people use it in non-standard ways because it is so limited in what it can actually represent.
So is HTML.
Well, HTML is a lot more descriptive. If you look at the RSS specification, like essentially there are chunks that say HTML can go here, but what that means is that RSS parsers just they throw their hands up and say, okay, there's something. And they don't try to do any reasoning about that. So if you wanted to say in an RSS feed, this post is in response to some tweet, good luck. Like no machine would understand that.
And probably even like location or weather or like anything like that.
Yeah, lots of metadata like that is not addable in a standard way. And like Atom kind of goes the other way, where like everything is overspecified with lots and lots of different document type descriptors. But whether a machine on the other end can actually like understand this weird random Yahoo specification for weather in your time zone or whatever is way up in the air. And so micro formats is a way of being pretty detailed in your descriptions without requiring the parsers to know a huge vocabulary. And then Greenery takes advantage of that by being able to take in one of these rich H feeds and generating the sort of like lower res versions that you might be able to feed into another machine. So like you can generate your RSS or Atom feed from your H feed, losing only the data that like those services can't understand. But then there's like a new standard called JSON feed that uses JSON, and it's micro.blog implements it, and like they support a few more attributes than, for example, Atom or RSS. Still not as many as an H feed might have, but Greenery will happily just boop boop spit that out for you.
And if you want to see an example, if you go to gregorlove.com/notes.atom. .atom, sorry. And so, yeah, it redirected you to Greenery. It's just taking, it's in the URL, it's taking my notes feed. I don't have an Atom feed on my site. I just have an H feed, and it's marking it up. I think it also even does like activity streams, which I don't even know exactly what that is, but like I noticed my likes. I noticed when I like stuff, it adds a little text in there. It's like, Gregor originally shared this. And I think that's like activity streams. So this is nice because I don't have to mess with XML at all. And when there are bugs, I can just ping Ryan Barrett and he fixes it. So there actually was something just recently, like it was with the date times, it wasn't respecting my time zone offset. It was adding the Z, and he fixed that in like less than 24 hours, you know? So yeah, this is, I bring this up just because I think this is a really good use case. You know, XML is really fragile, and when you change CMSs, it can be a pain to use.
Okay.
What other use cases?
Well, I guess there's hope that more things will support it. And
and we're seeing more and more. So there are RSS readers, feed readers that support HFeed, and it's not all of them by any stretch, or even the most popular. But Evergreen for Mac, I think, has it.
There's a request.
There's a request. Oh, right.
Well,
what am I thinking?
Brent himself, actually, I mean, he posted an issue, basically said support HFeed, so he's looking into it.
Okay, so yeah, the developer's working on that. There are, is it Feedbin? There's a page on the wiki that.
And the idea is, again, you don't have to like go and create separate JSON feeds, Atom feed, RSS feed, but you just have your recents page that's marked properly. But that requires you to have that recents page with like your 20 new posts or something.
Well, yeah. This kind of came up in discussion recently forget the exact context, but somebody was talking about like they wanted a feed of their posts, and the idea was for anything that you want a feed of, yeah, you should probably have a page. So most people, if it's a regular blog, that's just your homepage. You know, like you can subscribe to my homepage. It's an H feed, and whenever I do a new, so Woodwind is a good example. It does native H feed. It does XML too, but you can just go to Woodwind, log in with your site, say I want to subscribe to gregorlove.com, and it's going to find my H feed, and then I don't have to have a separate XML feed.
Okay.
But yeah, you generally want like a one-to-one for anything you want a feed of. You probably want a page on your site.
Yeah. What else? Other reasons for microformats. So things like Bridgie. If you want to take advantage of tools that will automate posting, like Bridgie, that you want to like,
yeah.
Bridgie publish. Bridgie is going to read your microformats in order to create that publish, that like thing on Twitter, and or to note like I wanted to like this tweet. Like if Bridgie is going to go like that tweet for you on Twitter, Bridgie has to be able to understand that this is in reply to some tweet, and it's going to use microformats markup for that. And that's just what Bridgie does. There could be a version of Bridgie that needs some other format, but there isn't.
In my demo this morning, when I went to Bridgie, I pasted in my URL, did the preview. It was reading my microformats.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does any are we
like we're
convinced?
talking a
Are we
lot.
convinced why? Since you're in a thing called microformats primer, does anyone need to be convinced that you should use microformats?
So,
Or does more questions?
if you add Open Graph to your website, you have support for the famous silos on Twitter and Facebook.
Well, when you say support, like specifically,
Well, they
like
will
when
know-
someone shares a link,
Yeah.
they'll see a
Yeah.
picture and a little headline. We call it a link preview.
Right.
And that's typically what people mean. Although occasionally they also mean like Google search engine having some concept of like what this post is. So like if it's a review, Google will show that like number of stars and a few other types. Is Google
So-
for a recipe?
I know they do H.
Yeah.
H review.
I'm ready to suspend my disbelief and to
Let's write some microformats.
Yeah. Okay.
Wait, what about microformats and schema markup? Do you
Um,
mix and match? Do you do?
Some people do both. They're different. So a parser that's going to eat one is going to ignore the other.
Yeah.
And it is frustrating because it is kind of duplicated data. I am not personally familiar with things that eat schema.org. Kevin Marks recently did a great post where he actually broke down like all of the ways that we write metacraft into our pages, and it included microformats, but also did like the set of tags for Twitter and the set of tags for Facebook. So he made this one kind of Uber post that's crammed with all of this different stuff, and it creates a different preview on every site and service. And he wanted to do one with schema.org, and he made a JSON link data, JSON LD block, and then he was like, who actually uses this?
Right.
And he started digging in, and it was like Google search sometimes uses this. It uses it uses like a subset of it. Google Plus, I think, pulled out. Originally, he targeted at Google Plus, but it turned out Google Plus didn't read it. Google Plus ended up following the AMP URL for his page, which was he did another joke on AMP. And so like AMP, people who landed on that page from AMP got a different page. And like that is now what Google Plus picks up. And the answer is just like, no one is quite sure who's using schema.org from our side. I'm sure there are people that are more into that space. I tend to see folks that get excited about JSON LD do it because they're like, but it's already JSON data. And they're excited that they don't need an extra parser, except you need a JSON parser and an HTML parser.
Right.
And since you're already HTML parsing, you could just use microformat. I don't know.
And that excuse me. And that JSON data is likely to get stale because it's not visible. So it's easy to update your page and not
Don't forget about that.
Yeah. I've heard pretty convincing arguments about like why to use it, but I'll just say like this is our flavor of metadata. And they're not incompatible, thankfully.
Yeah. I wanted to back up a little bit. You had mentioned OGP, and I think you're already convinced against it. We actually have a page on the wiki especially as far as Facebook is concerned, a lot of the OGP that they suggest or even require, you can actually, like, the fallbacks work fine. So like they have an OG title tag, it'll fall back to the title tag if you don't have that. Same for like, you know, the meta description for description. They also follow canonical links. If you have link rel equals canonical, they follow that. So that's like 3 of the 4. I think the only one you really might want to specify is like the image, especially if you have a post with multiple images, because otherwise they'll pick like the biggest one or something.
I consume Open Graph. I don't publish it, but I consume it for sites that don't have microformats. So my parsing is designed to basically look for both and favor microformats in the event that they're there. But if they aren't there, I try to produce something.
Yeah, nice.
And more people are using Open Graph, unfortunately, even though it doesn't necessarily have the fidelity or the flexibility.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's write some Open Graph. So.
If you want, in a new tab, open php.microformats.io. Microformats.io is a page that was set up about a year ago, and it just basically is like an introduction, like, here's what microformats are, here's some very simple examples, and here's parsers in like all the different languages, and it includes links to 4 different language parsers. So this is the PHP one. There's one in Ruby, Node, Python. I think those are the 4 examples that are working online.
Okay, it's not nothing in my markup, I think.
Excellent.
Right?
I think so.
Yeah, so items
Something's supposed to be
is where to
items.
look. Yeah, and there's an empty array of items. So pasting in your example.
Is this the example you were mentioning earlier? When
This is the example I wrote right now.
Okay. Well, this morning you had, I think you were talking about your live site. You had some questions about like author in each post or something like that.
Yeah, well, it's pretty similar. I want to like bring all my markup because it's going to be. Yeah.
Sure.
So. So I have to add H entry to the as a root thing. Right?
Yep.
What is like, so there's back here, but then where is the H entry is what I'm supposed to look at. Right?
Yes.
So P name is probably the title.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Okay. So I'm adding P name here. Okay. Date.
They published.
Right. Probably. Also, it probably requires the.
So yeah, usually you can put that on anything. Oh, it is on. It's already on the time tag. Great. I was gonna say.
I think it's a value.
It's a value, so you put the value attribute on that as well.
Like this.
Yeah, and then year,
Give the machine readable.
ISO 8601. So yeah, there you go. Yep. That's a minimal. That's an MVP right there. Yeah.
Okay. Content.
If anybody has questions as we're going along, feel free to stop us. By the way. So.
It's also called content, and so you just need a prefix. Yeah,
E.
Typically E content, which means to take tells the parser to take the elements inside of here. So take it as HTML.
Yeah, as we'll see in a moment, that'll actually generate like an object that has an HTML value with the raw HTML, and then a plain text string. So.
Okay, we can try that already, I guess.
Yeah.
Got an item here.
Boom.
Title published today, so it's not using.
Or we did it wrong.
I think it's not value.
Is it time or?
I think it's date time.
Oh, it's date time. Yeah, sorry, it's not value. That attribute.
Date time like this.
Yeah.
No, I'm not supposed to save it.
Yeah, in terms of that.
Okay, that's correct.
Yep.
All right.
Nice.
Yeah, so the E content, you have an HTML key and plain text value
Yeah,
key.
plain text. Cool. Okay.
This is a parser that you contributed a lot to.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm only a little biased.
Yeah. How do I tell it who created this thing? What if I already have somewhere here on my page I have a div with an author thing there.
I need to refresh my memory on authorship.
Yeah, there is
I
an
think-
algorithm.
Okay, so go ahead and make that an H card, the my name thing, or the div.
The
yeah.
div.
Then the div around it is the H card.
It could be
Then
either.
the my name is still p name.
Right,
Okay,
we could do a minimal H card.
Right. So
Okay.
name changes context because of the root tag.
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, now if you parse that, you'd actually have two items. You'd have an H entry item and an H card, and they're unrelated.
Mhm.
I'm doing this
Yeah.
off memory, so I could be wrong. In your H entry,
You can have an H card
Put a-
embedded inside it.
put an empty link to this same page with P author.
He's parsing bare HTML.
It's not going to follow the order. Oh yeah,
Yeah, I don't know what the parser will do.
it
We're just
probably
feeding it
won't do
chunks.
anything. Yeah.
So you're saying that I could have an author URL.
If you didn't want to, in a live environment, if you didn't want to include the author in each
Yeah.
one, basically, the attribute is P author, or well, in this case, no, sorry, U author. And if
It's a
you point it
URL.
to the same page or to
Yeah.
your home page, like wherever you have that or H card, it should go there and find that H card and say, okay, this is the author.
Okay.
So the minimal example in this case would, yes, it'd be an empty link pointed to U author.
It will actually follow links.
Yes.
Most parser as well, yeah.
IndieWeb.org/authorship there's actually like an algorithm. There's multiple ways you can do this. You can see it in work on Aaron's site.
Aaron uses a top level H card from the site of framework.
Right.
Yeah, can we
right.
just link to Aaron's site?
Yeah, I'm just about to try and see what it.
So how would that work?
Just it would be a and then a class on there, which is two classes: p author, u author in this case. That'll work for now.
And the link will be Aaron's website.
Yeah, the parser just puts in the URL. I need to get the charger.
Okay, found the H card. I found the entry.
And then I found the author.
I found the author,
Oh,
but there's
wow.
nothing about that.
Oh, it wouldn't
Just
put
the
anything
URL.
about that.
Yeah, the parser would
The
not.
parser doesn't
pull-
follow links.
Okay.
However, your site could follow the link. So let's say that you parse another person's site. You could say, "Oh, this is the author. I'll go fetch that page and parse it." But the test parser wouldn't do that.
That's not
Okay. Yeah, you mean
For example, I do. In my parser, if it detects that the author is a URL, it'll fetch that URL and try to parse it to display that author image. It'll look.
Okay.
It's trying to find the icon and everything.
So would it be correct to say that if like I have a blog where I have different authors, then I embed each in the
In the individual entry.
yeah. But if I have just one, it's me. I can just have if on that page I have an H card once,
It'll-
it's fine.
It'll apply to all the ones on the page.
Well, yeah, it doesn't here. I mean, but
Yeah, because it's a top level item. It's back to the authorship algorithm.
Yeah, the authorship algorithm is something kind of outside of microformats
Okay.
as the specification. It's something that we've identified as like, these are the different ways you can write up authorship information and how to discover it. It's an algorithm to discover it.
So it's if the page has an H card and the page has a bunch of H entries in it, the top level H card, unless there's a more specific one, overrides.
okay.
The image is class U photo.
Yeah, problem with that is that it's content, and I just wrote a content, inserted an image.
Oh, you
I
want it?
didn't.
No, I'm saying. Oh, you.
What? But I want it to be a featured image with microformat. So do I add a hidden
you-
image?
You featured.
You featured as
Yes, but I mean,
if
Oh,
you,
you
want to
don't
feature.
you don't want the image to display? Is that what you said?
yeah, I mean, I cannot. So this is just an image that comes from the like visual editor or something. I can't tell all my contributors to.
The placeholder image. Use dummyimage.com/size 300 by 400.
I'm not sure if I'm pressing my point correctly. All I'm saying is like metadata is something I control and I can spit out, but this is something that I just I have in my WordPress. Somebody wrote it. They are not marking up the image with correct tags. It's just an image, but I want it to be a featured image. So do I include a hidden image somewhere for it to be? So with Open Graph, I would just add a meta Open Graph tag.
Here you'd have to add a class to the image,
But so
which is, by the way, doable in WordPress.
okay, in WordPress maybe if it's
No,
like
you mentioned it.
you're writing Markdown by hand, then
You
What?
should be able to do a class for an image.
No, it doesn't seem to be.
I think there's a way.
What's that?
Not a regular Markdown.
Oh,
No, I'm saying there's like I'm almost positive there's an extension to do it. So it's back to sometimes you have to.
Well, if you have a way to get the Open Graph version of the image, then you then have a way to then.
I can insert it in the post. Just you mean like first thing in the content, then, or something like that. What I'm saying is, can I like everything else is hidden? It's a hidden URL. It's a hidden date time. I'm showing user-friendly content, but inside it's machine parsable data. Can I do the same thing with the image?
Could you make
just
you could
on
theoretically make a hidden link to an image that has
So-
you featured on it? Theoretically,
Could be a
I haven't
link,
seen how the
right?
parsing will do it.
So that's
yeah, you could make it a link. You could make it another empty link.
Right.
and say you.
But ideally, I mean, if it's a you featured image, I mean, you want that to appear, right?
Right, but I'm saying if I don't have control over content.
As a
Content of the post.
workaround, it should work in terms of it being seen, as far as I know. You're not checking to make sure that that you photo is on an actual image tag, are you? That would make any sense. I don't think.
Yeah, that's not how the parser works. Like,
Yeah,
the
that's what I was
prefixes
saying.
basically tell you, given this HTML, how do I find it? So for a link, if it has a U, it's going to look for URL, whether it's an href or a source. There's a whole algorithm.
So in theory, you could just put a div source plot.jpg and mark it up with a class, and it would find it.
I don't think, no, I think it's a little stricter. It actually does check the tag.
The
So
tag,
like,
yeah.
okay, sources are invalid for divs. I don't think it would work, but
What about a span surrounding the image? That I've never checked. That would actually work.
yeah, probably.
Okay, shouldn't fix it. So what are the other cool things? Do I have to change this drastically if I want to now have 3 posts if it's a recent page?
That should work great right there. Yeah.
So we
It'll give
will
you
find 3 entries.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as far as the H feed, we talked a little bit, we did show a demo of that, but like this is an implicit H feed. So if a feed reader is looking at this and it doesn't find a top level H feed element, it's supposed to treat each H entry basically as an entry in H feed.
Okay.
So
Why would I mark it up as HFeed then?
you
To add
can, well then you
additional-
can give your H feed a title. So it'll actually show up. And actually, this is getting a little bit in the weeds of microformats, but if you don't specify a P name is like the most common property for like every microformat. So it'll actually like imply a P name, and sometimes that makes sense if you're writing a minimal H card. You know, ahref equals example.com, John Doe. It implies the name, the URL, well, just the name and the URL. So that's the P name that it's implying. So if you do that for an H feed, it's going to imply the P name, and it's basically going to be all the text contents of the feed, which is kind of useless for like a title of a feed. So you want to give an explicit P name. That's probably easier to actually see in practice. But yeah, if you run that through, you'll see 3 different H entries in the items there.
What are the main resources I go to when I want to add microformats? Is
Microformats.org, yeah.
Okay.
Despite it looking dated, it is definitely maintained.
And
No, but it's like
IndieWeb.org has a lot of
says
stuff.
it says you photo. It doesn't explain what that means. Or does it? I mean, sorry, I'll be.
Are you on
trashing
the,
this record.
Which page is this? Is this H entry?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It was no. It's microformats 2 page where and it's I'm in H entry.
Oh, okay. So there's actually a wiki page for H entry.
Oh, okay.
That probably has. This might be a page that needs to be updated more, I guess.
Boom.
Yep, there you go. There's the actual spec.
Okay.
So yeah, if you go back into your markup, if you just wrap it in a div class H feed, you can see the what I was talking about with like the implied name.
You can just put on the body.
Yeah, there you go.
Mhm. That's right.
And this is actually something we're working on resolving right now, by the way, in the specification.
Like what exactly?
Basically, if you have,
The H feed and not H feed thing, or
yeah, so see, there's the name. Like that's not a useful name. Now if you
wait,
go,
it's using everything.
yeah, it's the plain text contents of everything inside that H feed. So now if you just add like a heading under there that says, you know, my feed with a class P name.
I do a hidden one on my site.
I think I usually do too. Oh no, I put it on my
P
title.
P name.
It's P name and citing.
Yeah, I put it on my title element.
Mhm.
So first P name inside the H feed is
Mhm.
not gonna look into this, right?
Yeah, that H card would actually probably now need to move to ideally, but that's a separate topic. Yeah, you can have nested.
That H card, you could call it author. Give it
Okay.
like U author H card or P author H card.
For the author of the H feed. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, H feed can have an author.
That's right. And yeah, that would probably be implied to all the H entries too, right?
Yeah, so for a list of posts, if you don't have author info per post, but you put the author on the feed, the authorship algorithm says like, is this entry in a feed and does the feed have an author? That's part of it. So that H card that you have inside the feed right now, you could just say like, this is the author info for this feed. And then that will apply to all the posts inside it.
Okay. The value has the URL of the image. Let's see.
Yeah, because it's a textification of the HTML content.
Yeah, if you had an alt tag, you could put an alt tag in there. So you can technically put in if you don't want that in there at all, or no alternate text, just leave a blank alt.
Okay. Yeah, is there anything else cool I should be doing with my hypothetical?
What do you want to do?
Good question.
No, what do you want your post to look like in general? What things do you want to include in them?
Maybe location, weather, all that stuff.
Okay, weather is somewhat underdeveloped on the microformat side. So that's mostly experimental properties.
Location. Also.
What?
Location.
Location is much more mature. So there is a P- location that's used by a lot of people.
Is it still H? Like there is H.
There's
A lot
HGeo.
of things.
Yeah.
HGeo
how
can be
should I
nested
choose
inside of the
which-
location.
when is it entry and when is it geo? When is it an entry with a geotag inside it and when it's actually so when the whole meaning of it is it check-in? Is it H entry or is it a geo?
It's an H entry and it has a location attribute.
Okay.
That location
I
attribute
believe.
can be
I
a
actually
geo or
don't.
can
I
just
actually don't
be
do
a-
check-ins myself, but there are plenty of examples in the wiki.
That's fine.
Well, I can help you with that. I marked it up if you want.
Yeah. See what Marty does.
Yeah, so I have an H entry and it has a check-in property.
Yeah, but
which I think
You want a check-in or a note with a location? They're two different things.
yeah, those are two different
Just
things.
know the location.
Note with location is P-location inside your H entry.
Okay.
Which is more like saying I authored this note at this place.
Yeah,
correct?
so if you wanted just a text-based one, that would just be in between the span. You'd have
But
Baltimore.
both of those are still H entries, though. Is probably the
Otherwise, inside there, you could also put in more details about the location and break it down. You could wrap the city, you could wrap the state.
Right.
You'd end up with more.
Okay.
If you want to see a really complicated one, put Aaron Parecki's site into the parser. He has a lot of stuff on his front page.
A lot of interesting side cases.
Well, no, put it into the parser.
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry. You
No?
need to scroll down. There is.
So this won't work.
Go back to this PHP. Yeah. The reload that page without reposting it. There you go. Enter URL.
So if you look at his,
So yeah, his H card is on his homepage. So he has like all these.
he has
links,
he has organizations that he's part of.
Yep.
And his organizations are also H cards because they would be. So he's listed as the founder of IndieWebCamp there. He's listed as OAuth.net. He's listed as an editor at W3C. So he has all these Stream PDX co-founder. So that's a really long and complicated H card. He has a UID. He has his birthday in there.
There's his check-in. Yeah.
So there's a check-in.
Yep. You
That's
check
on this
in,
page.
check coffee thing, and that's
See it-
where you break down the location as you mentioned.
Well, a check-in is to an H card because an H card would be a location. You could also do a check-in just to a location, but it's supposed to be to a
It could also be to a URL, like, and the implication is there, like, go to this URL and find the H card, and that's where I checked it.
Yep.
So you can see a lot. There he has a location that has a full, it isn't a plain text address. He has locality and region in addition. So he's broken it down so you can figure out not just overall location, but the individual pieces. And he apparently has been sleeping in a dark room.
Events might be another one.
Is there, like, would be cool if there was a, like, constructor where I could choose what types of things I want, and it would spit out an example for me, so that I would be more interested in using it on the website.
That's an interesting one because I don't use H address. I use H cards for my.
Well, H address is a structured address.
It's off. Yeah, it's weird. I don't.
Yeah, I may be doing it wrong.
No, I don't think you are.
Well, no, H card means something slightly different than H address. H address is a structured address, whereas H card is basically it's a location.
It's an entity that can have a lot of the same properties as an address. Yeah,
That's a better way of describing it than I was getting at.
that was the only way I could make sense of it in my head because I was like, I knew there was a reason I picked it. There's Gregor brought up events. So if you go to my homepage or the event for this website or the website for this event, if you go to 2018.indieweb.org/Baltimore and toss that in the parser, it's got some interesting stuff on there. So at the high level, it's an H event.
It has a location,
Which is an H card.
so people could check into that if they wanted to. You have the name of the event, the summary of the event, the start of the event.
Two different values. One of them is very wrong. What is that? What is that?
Whoa,
Which one?
Where's that coming from?
It must appear
That
twice on
says
the page.
it's on the 29th. That's just got to be typoed. Yeah. It's probably a copy paste replace error.
Start has like a. Oh, okay, that's the.
Yeah, that looks like it's an error.
It's in the header.
Why would that be an array though?
It's invisible.
Good question. Almost everything in microformats is an array, and so if you check it out, like name is technically an array.
Well, value is not.
There is
Value is not. That's a derived value.
yeah. So on this
Properties
page,
are always an array.
on this page, there's
derived wouldn't be.
Because you're expecting multiple might be there, or?
no, on this page, it's authored with 2 date start values, which probably ideally it shouldn't be. But
Right.
yeah, date start appears twice. Like in the header, there's a date, and that's where the date time is actually wrong. And then a little bit below that is another date start. So yeah, it compiles those and puts them in an array. And I think actually, yeah, if they were authored correctly and they were both the same, the parser would just collapse them. There would only be one. Pretty sure.
After that extraneous time.
Yeah, is there
Yeah,
something we
normal.
should cover?
What's that?
Is there something else we should cover? Like, there's.
Does anybody else have any use cases or questions or?
Well, we haven't really talked about experimental. Is there something that's
Well,
really we haven't done very much with?
You're
it?
shoving up something else.
What's that?
You could use. Never. I was going to. I have questions about media posting, but it's not really necessary.
We
Well,
do
you
have U audio and
Yeah.
U video, so you can extract
In
URLs
addition
of
to
those.
photo.
Yeah, it's the same parsing algorithm. So
We have 10 minutes.
Oh, so it's back to weather.
Do we have 5 minutes?
Full circle.
Well, no, micro formats for weather
Yeah,
is actually
5
something
minutes,
that we
yeah.
don't have really.
yeah, experimenting with microformats is relatively easy because like the parser is looking for the prefixes more than anything, you know. So you can have H dash whatever, and the parser will extract that.
So there are a few
The
experimental
main
ones.
issue is like who's actually consuming it. So
Right.
Well, the question is what
but, like,
comes first, the consumer or the the producer, if enough people start adding it to their site, then somebody's going to want to consume it. Or is it the vice versa? If you find out somebody's consuming it, you're going to want to add it. Two of one and one of the other.
Yeah.
Are there any experimental options that more than two individuals are consuming? I.e., somebody is testing it and another person is also testing it, and more than two people are using it?
Plenty.
What are some leading ones?
Consuming it? I don't know that.
Or using it in their flow to.
Well,
I'm using it to publish read posts. So I've been posting. I started with basically just text posts. Like I want to read, and then link to the book and the title, and it's italicized. And I had there's an H site that's an established microformat. So if somebody wanted to consume that, they could. And then actually for IndieWebCamp Boston, talking to Aaron, I worked out that want to read needs to be a property that machines can consume. So we added p-read status.
Cool.
And we have so the three that I've experimented with, actually published, is to read, reading, and finished. And then there was also, we added the property p-read of, and that's what you basically nest the H site in. So it's like, this is a read of this thing that I'm citing, or this book or this article or whatever.
And I have the ones from Postkines that I had to change to of because we were moving in an of direction. Listen up. Originally it was posted as listen. It was changed to listen of because it's like of when it's referring to an outside property. So I have listen of, watch of, and I think even though it's not enabled, somebody asked for wish of, and it's still there.
That reminds me, there is markup for when you show other people's responses on your page.
Not wishes.
So if someone likes my post from their page and I show them in a thing and I give a permalink back, that's like that is a like. That's like a p like or a u like.
Yeah.
To show that
to distinguish between the relationship the other one's like of.
Yeah.
So you doing it on you liking something outside is like of, you marking up a received like is like.
Yeah, and then mentions, at least I'm marking them up this way as H cites. They're a citation basically. So it's like when I show your comment from your site on my page that you commented about, I show that as it's a citation. And yeah, I was curious.
And even though I think somebody marked them up as P mention as well, even though that's not really a thing.
I think I marked them up as you comment.
You comment.
Yeah. You comment is for
you comment
for
H
replies.
site. Yes.
Oh, it is an H site. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So you comment H site on the same element, and that's basically. I think the main reason for that, the comment thing is technically optional, but it's something called cell mentions, which is sort of like I write a post, he replies to it, you reply to his post, and basically it should send that all the way upstream. So in theory, I could have a thread of this whole conversation that was initiated by my post. That's called cell mention off of salmon, basically. So in order for the sites that participate in cell mention to do that, they basically need to be able to find the URL for comments easily. So if I use uComment, parsers can pull out very easily just the URL.
And that's why it evolved, because the recommendation was.
Yeah, that's why it evolved to that recommendation. But if you're not participating in cell mention, I mean, really H site is fine. That's semantically correct. You're citing something on somebody else's site. That distinguishes it from this is my original content.
It goes deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't expect to go into stuff like this. That's great though.
All right, let's say we're at a minute because we're at less. Any final thoughts? I would say go to
any actions for tomorrow.
Yeah. Well,
I'm still waiting for an answer on that one. How do I mark up weather?
Great question to work on tomorrow. I think you should also, everyone, join the Microformats channel on IRC. Do we bridge that? We don't. You have to find your own way in.
I think you do.
To Slack.
You do Slack.
I thought it was sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're in our Slack, Microformats is the room there. And anytime there's questions like, how do I mark up weather on a post? That's where the discussion is going to end up. You're also going to learn about a lot of weird things like value, class, property. Is that right?
Don't forget how to deal with the mismarkup of default WordPress sites, which is Was that a
Yeah, we didn't talk about microformats 1 versus 2. But most WordPress sites have microformats markup. It's just 10 years old. And
not only that, it was misinterpreted.
Right. Oh yeah, and people use it for styling all the time. And
Well, that was the problem. Somebody marked it up so that every H feed without the dash is the old version of the more modern H feed, and if you look at a lot of WordPress themes, they put H feed into the header, which means every page is marked as an H feed. Even single pages, where single pages shouldn't have an H feed, they should just have an H entry. So because people just put that in because they copied it from somebody else over and over again, you have like 50% of WordPress themes that still have that markup, not knowing what it means or why it's there.
People.
Well, I finally got the underscores theme, starter theme, which a lot of themes start with to remove it on single pages.
Sweet.
Which is nice, but a lot of cruft out there.
A lot of cruft out there. I think on that note,
I thought that was a good. I thought that
that's a good button.
That's gonna be the name of my Microformats podcast.
The end.
We can talk about the weather.
The end of our programming for today.
But we talked about talking about that.
See everyone tomorrow for demos.
You need help cleaning up, Reed?